afternoon. This is Community Unity Now, the D Tycoon Show. I am Trudy Leong, administrator of the Rogers Park Chamber of Commerce, and Bill Morton, my co-host, is running behind in his schedule, so I will be the host today. Our very special guest is Michael Zink. He is the candidate for the 20th the 20th Subcircuit Court of Cook County.
And thank you for having me, Trudy.
All right, thank you so much, Michael. How is the campaign going? How many polling places are you visiting now?
Well, I'm trying to get to all of them. Right now, it's still early voting, and so I think there are about 7 wards that have them open. Where there's one for each ward throughout the city. So I'm trying to visit as many as I can between now and the 18th, which is the last day of just those wards being, or just those polling places being open. And then, of course, on the 19th, everything opens up,
right.
And I think there's in excess of 100 just in our subcircuit of different polling places. So just trying to visit, and it's been a great experience. People have been very friendly, and many people are learning about the judicial candidates still. And so it's when you're out there, you can tell them about yourself. You can you give them palm cards. They can ask you questions about your background. They can go through it, the various levels of support you have. Most importantly, they want to know, why should they vote for you as a judge? And so you explain to them, and it's I've actually had a lot of experiences where people have interacted with me, and very humbly for me, they've gone in and they voted for me moments later, which means a great deal. That people who moments ago were just strangers now are comfortable enough to cast their vote for me. So it has been a wonderful experience, and I think it's also informative, because what I tell those people also is, feel free to have anybody, if your friends, family, anybody in the community, reach out to me. I'll give them my palm card, and they can reach out through the website or various other means, and then I can find out. And if they have questions, or if they have wanted to find out a little bit more about me, I'm happy to speak with more and more of the voters. And so I think it's been a great turnout so far in terms of all the different voters. It's also very encouraging to see how spirited people are, and they want to know about the judges. And there are so many other races out there. As you can see, everybody sees all the signs all over the place now. It's that time of year. And so, trying to kind of make sense out of all of that and figure out, which judges they should support.
Yeah, when they see too many signs, it's hard to single out one of them.
Absolutely.
Well, do they ask you, what does the Subcircuit Court do? Do they ask you?
Absolutely. It's, many people ask, one of the common questions is, what does this even mean? Even if you get elected, where do you go? Where can you practice? Or I should say, where should you preside? And so you have to explain to them, even though this subcircuit goes from about the Gold Coast up through Edgewater and about 16 blocks to the west or so, give or take, you can be put absolutely anywhere. And people are amazed that you can go from, Skokie in the north in the 2nd district all the way to Markham in the south, which is the 6th district, or Bridgeview is the 5th district, or Maywood the 4th district, 1st district of course being downtown, and Rolling Meadows being the 3rd district. And what I'm able to tell everybody is I've practiced in all those different districts. I've worked in all those courthouses for many years. I'd be comfortable wherever I were placed. And of course I explain to people that whoever wins the election, for the first 6 months or so of being a judge, they're going to be in traffic court. You're learning the ropes. You're not only learning kind of how the process works and with the procedures, but you're also learning. You're talking to individual litigants in there, whether they're lawyers or self-represented litigants. You're getting the hang of how to do all that. You're probably giving the morning speeches eventually as you get a little more comfortable, and then as you progress out of that, then the chief judges will put you wherever they need you, because there are vacancies throughout the county at any given time. And so these new judges have to go out to these various different areas. And again, it could be any of those 6 districts.
Let's clarify. So Subcircuit, you would start off at the traffic court, but in the future, if you were to run for circuit court, if you win that and you start, that would be another kind of traffic court that you start off at, right?
Well, no, actually, it's all pretty much the same in terms of traffic courts. So whether you're running for a subcircuit like this, or even some of the countywide judges that you see on the ballots, basically everybody, no matter who wins in that subcircuit or even countywide, is going to wind up in traffic court to begin with. And generally, that's going to be downtown at the Daily Center as well. And you'll be there for probably anywhere between 6 months to a year, depending on vacancies, and depending on where the judges who are in charge of each different division want to start placing people. And And of course, there along the way, some judges may retire out of various districts, so more openings may open up. And so basically what happens is any judge who gets elected, no matter whether it's Subcircuit or countywide, will wind up eventually in traffic court to begin with. And then after that, they'll get spread out wherever they're needed. And so it's important for judges to be flexible with that. Not only that, because even if you've dabbled and worked in various areas of the law, one way or another, most judges wind up somewhere that they may not have been practicing entirely during their career. So you have to learn about it, and you have to do the research. Generally, every court division has what's called a bench book, where you look at the major cases that are in that particular area of the law. But on top of that, of course, you're going to be surrounded by great minds, the judges who have been on the bench for a number of years in that particular division. And so you'll work with those judges to learn some of the ropes as well. And then, of course, you'll go in there and you'll start learning things on your own. It's just like any lawyer who's practicing law, you're going to learn on a daily basis more and more information.
Yeah, you see everything. Every case is different, so you learn a little bit from every case. What about you said countywide? So when countywide, do you mean circuit court when you're talking about countywide? And subcircuit is you could be assigned to anywhere in the Cook County-wide to work in those courtrooms. Okay.
Yeah, well, pretty much the distinction is what I'm running for is in the subcircuit, which is in my case is the 20th subcircuit.
Yes.
And then countywide, of course, is somebody who's running throughout the county, but that's for the election purposes. So in other words, anybody who's running countywide, they have to go throughout the county because they're going to be on every ballot throughout the county to get elected, and so they have to go every single all over the county. And of course, the county is huge; it's bigger than a lot of countries, and so those candidates have to go all over the place, and they'll be considered full circuit judges, whoever wins those elections. Sub-circuit elections are different in the sense that the ballots, I'm going for example, in my race, I'll only be on the 20th sub-circuit ballots, which again are pretty much all the ballots from Edgewater on the north down to the Gold Coast on the south, and anywhere in between. But I won't be on countywide ballots, so I won't be in the various county suburbs ballots or even various parts of Chicago that aren't covered by our sub-circuit. But basically, whoever wins these elections, you can go anywhere, whether you were elected as a sub-circuit judge or if you were one of those countywide judges and you were elected by the whole county, you can go absolutely anywhere. And either way, everybody starts in traffic court to get the ropes. Yeah.
Okay. And then why do they have that distinction if everybody is going to be working side by side almost?
Well, I think the sub-circuits are important because and that was a product of the General Assembly in Springfield a few years ago. They created more sub-circuits. There were only 15 up until 2 years ago. Now there's up to 20, and this one that I'm running for is the 20th and the newest one. The whole point behind all that was to increase the diversity. And so the way that it's been structured, as I understand it, is essentially each of these new sub-circuits, the 16th through the 20th, can have up to 2 openings. In the 20th this time, there was only 1 opening. But I believe all the other ones, 16, 17, and 18 at least, I think each have 2. And that's to increase the diversity on the bench. We're still lacking in diversity on the bench. Over the many generations that was not considered. And so as a result, I applaud the General Assembly for making those considerations, and I think it's going to work well. I think it will increase the diversity of our judges. I think that's one of the things that we're going to really have to work on still, at least for the next generation or so, because again, for many generations, diversity and considering people's various backgrounds was never even a thought in terms of creating judges, and as a result, there was very little diversity on the bench, and still was until recent years.
You've been in a lot of bar associations, and you've had meetings with various other bar associations that were more ethnic concentrated. And then are those bar associations trying to get more of their attorneys and members into the judicial positions?
Absolutely. Every one of the cultural bar associations is striving to get more and more of their members and their leaders into the judiciary. And so I think there are about 13 that are members of what's called the Alliance. The Alliance is a group of all these various bar associations that review judges. And so basically every candidate who runs for judge is welcome to apply and should apply through that process. And then the Alliance gathers with all these various cultural bar associations, and they all interview the candidates. They do a very rigorous background on every candidate who applies. Now, if you don't apply, and some candidates elect not to participate in that, then those candidates from all those bar associations, including the Illinois State Bar Association, are going to be found not recommended or not qualified, depending on what the designation is for each organization, because those organizations want to see all the candidates. They want to investigate them. These investigations are they're confidential, but generally speaking, what they do is they involve a rigorous background search of your credentials in writing, but also people not just judges who you've been before, lawyers who know you, judges who know you, even opposing attorneys who know you, and it's very rigorous, and they put everybody through a significant amount of meticulous research so that they can make a smart and a well-reasoned decision as far as, is this judge qualified or recommended to be on the bench. In my case, I've been fortunate. I've been reviewed by 15 of these bar associations. All 15 have found me qualified or recommended, depending on which designation they use. And it's important that that does show that there's a relative amount of uniformity, that people have reviewed my credentials and have found me to be qualified or recommended for the bench. Whereas people who don't go through the process are generally not going to be recommended at all, because they didn't want to have any scrutiny to their background. They didn't want to go through that process. Mm-hmm. So these bar associations, to your question regarding diversity, absolutely. Though there are many members of each of these bar associations who run for judge, and of course every year there are only a certain number of seats, but many of them do succeed, and they do make we reach the judiciary, and that's fantastic for our judiciary, because again our judiciary was lacking in diversity and still is to a very large extent, and so the more that we can promote, the better.
For the Alliance, if a candidate does not apply to be reviewed, then does their name still end up on the list saying that they're not recommended, or their name just doesn't appear as recommended or not?
They'll still be on the list of all the various candidates, but you'll see, and generally the Alliance makes it very clear that this person was found either not recommended or not qualified, whatever designation they use, because they declined to participate in the process. Oh. And it's a shame when people don't participate in the process, because again, this is all for the general public. The general public's going to be able to look at this online and say, what did all these various bar associations find about these various candidates? And if they see that somebody didn't bother, participating in the process, voters will make their own decisions, but it will definitely be a contrast with all the other judicial candidates who did.
So the various bar associations in the Alliance, they interview you, right? What do they usually talk with you about?
Well, those are confidential in terms of, so I wouldn't be able to go into great detail, okay. But it's generally understood that even publicly, many of the bar associations look for things, for example, your skills, your experience in litigation, your temperament, what kind of, whether you've had sensitivity to diversity and bias. Most of the bar associations have these general guidelines, and there are a handful of others as well that they go through. And those are important things that they have to investigate, and they do investigate them very well. The judicial evaluation committees for all these various bar associations throughout the Alliance, and as well as the Chicago Bar Association, which is actually another one that's outside of the Alliance, all these groups do a tremendous amount of work. I don't think people realize how much time and effort goes into not only going through people's credentials, contacting all the various people who know this particular candidate, but also then time interviewing each candidate among a big crowd.
How many are in the crowd? There's usually that ballot has so many names. Would there be like over 100? It seems like over 100.
Well, every cycle there are typically in excess of 100 people who are running for a particular judicial office.
Right.
And so all of these organizations, they get together for these interviews, and even if it's just one or two people from each organization who's able to join the interview, the process, it's very important that everybody have a view of what this person is about, because paperwork and all these other people's interviews, those are all helpful, but speaking to the candidate themselves is very important, because you get a sense: is this person truly ready for the bench? Is this person who's somebody who's truly qualified? Is this somebody who should be recommended for the bench? And all these organizations do a tremendous amount of work, and even then on top of all that work that they do leading up to that, each bar association then has to go and meet among their own committees and make determinations among all these various candidates. And again, like you said, it's a lot of times it's in excess of 100 candidates. And so they really have a great deal of work to do. And so our bar associations...
And you've been in such committees before evaluating other candidates.
I have. I've served on the State Bar Association, the Illinois State Bar Association one, which was involved with the Alliance, of course, and then the Advocate Society of the Polish American Attorneys as well. It's a tremendous amount of work, but it's very worthwhile. And as you can see, as I was saying earlier, when, just meeting people at the polls, this is important because then the general public can look at these recommendations. What is this person qualified? Is this person recommended? They can make much more informed decisions about them. And with the various cultural bar associations as well, is this person, being recommended by these various organizations, or are they being found qualified?
When they're making their decisions, they still don't know what the other bar associations have come up with yet. Even if the other bar associations have finished their evaluations, they don't release them until when?
Correct. They don't release them until pretty much before voting is about to start. And so there's not really any knowledge among the bar associations. What did one particular association find, or what did another find? Everybody has their own internal processes, which again, really speaks to the objectivity as much as possible of, these candidates, and looking through, is this candidate somebody who should be on the bench? Are they qualified? Or, should we recommend them?
Well, these reviews compared with endorsements, like from these elected officials, such as, let's say, State Representative Margaret Croak, she's on the top of the list. What happened when before you got her endorsement? What did you have to do?
Well, every elected official, in terms of endorsements, and as just up to your point, this is different from the bar associations. The bar associations don't make endorsements; those are just finding whether somebody's qualified or recommended. But to endorsements, generally those are leaders in the community, oftentimes elected officials. So and generally those come from a variety of sources. Every elected official in that capacity, they have their own procedure, process, knowledge, essentially what they do it however they want to do it. Some don't endorse at all; they just stay out of the race.
Do you have to apply? How did you get these endorsements? Did you have to meet them, ask them, apply?
Many of them,
what happened?
the great many of them are people who I've worked with for many years in the community. Representative Croak, for example, has been in my community ever since she was elected, and we were both in leadership roles in my community. And so, she very frequently would attend our monthly meetings for our community. And so, many people in the community have gotten to see her and gotten to know her. And the interesting thing about her, but also the many other elected officials who've been involved in our community, they're so open to come to our meetings to explain not only what they do on a daily basis.
What meetings are they coming
this
to?
is, for example, in my case, it was the East Lakeview Neighbors. East Lakeview Neighbors is one of the largest community groups in all of Lakeview. It includes both the Wrigleyville area, but as well as the North Halstead LGBTQ community. And so what our elected officials often would do is come and not only explain what they do on a regular basis, but they would come and explain, what have I done in the last 2, 3, 4 weeks? Especially during COVID, this was so important because we were still getting together every month on Zoom. And, it was very different. Everybody was still adjusting. But more and more of our elected officials realized this is the best way to reach people, especially while we were still, unable to really meet in person for a while. And so what happens is then, what became even more interesting of our elected officials, especially during that time, they can meet during the process of lawmaking. So, for example, in Springfield, between January and the end of May is generally when they make all the laws down there and they pass all the bills. So we have our elected officials, both our state representatives as well as our state senators, they can come on our meetings and explain, here's what we're doing now, this is where this bill is. Right now it has this, this kind of support. I think I'm going to support it, but maybe not. I'm going to, and it's kind of an interesting moment and a snapshot of where the lawmaking actually begins. And I think our community really appreciates that.
And the community, if they have questions, they could ask these elected officials too.
Absolutely, and these elected officials are much more accessible than people realize. These, as I've told so many people, our state representatives, our state senators, as well as our older people, are generally the ones who make the laws that affect our day-to-day lives. That's not to say our members of Congress don't; they certainly do, but that's on a federal level. But when you go to the state level and the city level, it's really, really very important because these people are making all the laws that affect us, and that's why they really want to hear from the community, and they're very receptive.
What about the judges, the judicial branch? How much do they affect people's lives versus these public officials? If they end up in your courtroom, of course that's a major hands-on effect. But what about if not, how much do the judicial branch affect a resident?
Oh, the judicial branch is extremely important to everybody's lives. You may only see a judge in person 1 or 2 times in your life for various things, whether it's traffic or some other kind of a lawsuit. But the bottom line is, yes, judges are critically important, not only because they're interpreting those laws that those lawmakers are making, but they're affecting people's lives directly. It's up to a judge, for example, when they're, no matter what kind of case it is, whoever they have in front of them, it is critical that they treat them not only with the utmost respect, but also with dignity, and to also hear them out. That's always been a criticism of some judges, is that they were unwilling to listen to people, or otherwise some litigants didn't feel like they got a fair shake. So more and more importantly, judges not only can administer justice fairly, but also they can give that perception of justice, and so then those litigants who are before them can go back to their communities and say, I got my fair day in court. That judge did a good job. I may not have agreed with what that judge said or did, but they did listen to me. They heard me out. They asked informed questions. They made their decision, and that's what I found to be fair.
So let's say these public elected officials that you requested an endorsement. Do you know if they looked on your record as a community servant, or your judicial, what you did as a lawyer?
Every endorser is going to have their own reasons for supporting somebody. In my case, as I said, I've worked hand in hand with a great many elected officials for many years, and I think many of them understood community leadership is critical. It's also critical of a judge in particular, for the reasons I mentioned earlier. Judges have a direct impact on people's lives, and it's important that if you are a community leader, are you somebody that whose skills in that role can translate well to the bench? And I think in my particular case, I've been a leader in so many different varieties of the community that I think many of our elected officials were impressed by that. As I said, every endorser has their own reasons and their own processes, but it is flattering to get such support among some of the many great leaders of our time.
Did you actually ask them if they would endorse you, or did they just were you just surprised that they came out and endorsed you? What happened?
It works both ways. Sometimes they reach directly out once they find out that you're running for a judge, and they'll say that they are absolutely willing to and thrilled to endorse you. Other times you make the actual inquiry yourself. As I said, it changes. It's different with every single person in terms of why they endorse and who they endorse. In my particular case, again, it's really flattering. Our members of Congress, our state senate, most of our state senators, our state representatives, as well as our committee people across the board throughout our subcircuit.
So did you go to their office? Those that had not endorsed you yet, did you go to their office and ask to see them, or maybe spoke with their staff? How did you work it? No,
as I said earlier, many of these elected officials are very directly accessible, and so what happens is you talk to them. Whether they reach out or you reach out to them, you have that conversation, and they'll ask very pointed questions about what your background is, what your experience is, what your community leadership is, and you go through all that. And of course, charity work is very important. So our elected officials do a good amount of diligence before they lend their support. And I think people often ask what do these endorsements mean? And I think it means two things as far as I'm concerned. One, it means that these individuals who we've entrusted our government to through our vote are now seeing fit to entrust somebody else to a different level of government, in this case throwing support to me, which is flattering and humbling. But also on top of that, I think it also shows a variety of different ideologies, meaning some of the elected officials who've endorsed me are very progressive, others are probably more moderate. The fact that you're running for a judge and you're able to get people from different ideologies and different parts of the spectrum.
Michael, we are almost out of time.
Sure.
If our viewers want to learn more about you, where should they go?
www.zinkforjudge will be on my website, and I'm happy to answer any questions through the website as well.
And you will be at the various precincts where the polling places are?
I hope to see people there. I'll be there up until the 18th, and then on the 19th, I'll be all over.
Awesome. Okay, this has been Community Unity Now. I am Trudy Leong, Administrator of the Rogers Park Chamber of Commerce, and we had Michael Zink, who is running for the 20th Subcircuit Court of Cook County. Thank you so much for being with us, and we'll see you again next week.